Across the endless galaxy where light moved like whispers and ancient powers slept between stars, Empress Zyra of the Seraph Dominion stood alone inside her colossal shadow-filled throne hall, a place feared by millions yet shaking tonight with something far darker than authority: pure grief. Her tall, obsidian pillars reflected the faint glow of the cracked crystal she held tightly in her trembling hands. That crystal once carried her child's life essence, a sacred bond only Seraph royalty possessed, a bond that could never break unless the child was gone. The Empress, a ruler known for burning fleets without blinking, a woman whose voice made entire star systems kneel, felt her knees weaken for the first time in centuries. Around her, the cold palace walls seemed to breathe sorrow back at her. Her armies had searched every corner of the Dominion. They had destroyed moons, interrogated star captains, wiped out rebel clusters, hunted every known enemy. They found no killer, no signs of a battle, only silence. And the legend spread like poison through every species, through every council, through every ship traveling between galaxies. The Empress has lost her child. The galaxy will burn. Fear rose so fast that smaller civilizations shut their borders. Some worlds prayed. Some worlds armed themselves. Others whispered that perhaps the gods had taken her child away. But none knew the truth. Zyra's child had not been killed by an enemy blade or an assassin's poison. Her child had vanished inside a mysterious cosmic storm, an anomaly near Sector 9, a region so dangerous and unpredictable that even humans, who loved testing forbidden things, stayed far away. That anomaly devoured everything that drifted too close. Ships disappeared. Machines failed. Light bent in wrong directions. No one who entered came back. It was said to be alive. Zyra had ordered every fleet she commanded to search the edges of that storm, but even her might had limits. The storm mocked her grief. She would have ripped the galaxy apart for answers, but the void gave her none. Still, deep inside, a small voice refused to accept death. A mother's voice. Her child was not dead. Something had taken them, something no empire could fight. Days turned into weeks and weeks into long cold months. The Empress barely spoke. Her throne hall, once full of intimidating energy, felt heavy with sorrow. Even her strongest warriors avoided looking into her eyes, because her grief was more terrifying than her anger. Then one silent night, as she stood staring at the broken crystal like a grieving statue, an alarm echoed through the palace. One tone, sharp, single, forbidden. The tone used only when something impossible entered Seraph space. Zyra's eyes snapped open. Every royal guard rushed to their positions. The entire Seraph Dominion fell into immediate war protocol. Ships prepared to fire. Fleets repositioned. Defense lines activated. The palace screen flickered alive, and an officer spoke in a shaky voice barely able to hide terror. "Empress, a human ship has crossed the forbidden boundary." The hall exploded with confusion. A human ship? Here? That was impossible. Humans would never dare. Humans had treaties. Humans had survival instincts. Humans valued life. And even if some reckless explorer attempted it, no human vessel could survive the energy storms that guarded Seraph borders. Zyra's voice, cold but cracking with hidden emotion, echoed through the palace. "Show me." The main holomap zoomed in. There it was, a small, damaged human shuttle drifting closer, engines flickering, shields failing, but still alive. "How is it still functioning?" a guard whispered. No one answered. The ship pushed forward like it had a purpose. It ignored every automated warning. It ignored the Seraph command ship's attack threats. It moved straight toward the palace landing bay, slow, deliberate, almost peaceful. Zyra felt something twist in her stomach, a strange fear she did not understand. She stepped closer to the screen. "Scan for weapons." "None," the officer replied. "Scan for life. One life form, human male, heart rate unstable. No weapons detected. No weapons. No bombs. No army. Just one human, coming straight to her." The Empress narrowed her eyes. Nothing about this made sense. The hall filled with her silent tension as she walked down from her throne. Her long dark robes flowed behind her like shadows obeying their queen. Every warrior bowed. Every advisor trembled. She reached the landing bay entrance where dozens of armed Seraph elite forces stood ready to fire. The air felt heavy. The floor hummed with power as the human shuttle touched down, landing unevenly as if it had barely survived its journey. The ramp lowered slowly, releasing a hiss of cold air and sparks from damaged circuits. The Seraph soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons. Zyra watched without blinking. A figure appeared inside the doorway. Silhouette thin, posture tired, steps slow. A human man. His clothes torn, covered in dust from space storms. His movements controlled, not threatening, not aggressive, not fearful either. He wasn't shaking like any other species would be when facing the Seraph Empress. Instead, he walked with something heavier, sorrow. His left arm held something wrapped in white cloth. Something small. Something shaped like... Zyra's heart stopped for half a beat. The human stepped down, calm despite dozens of weapons pointed at him. The Seraph guards shouted warnings. He didn't react. The Empress stepped forward, her voice ice-cold. "Human, identify yourself." The man looked directly at her. His eyes weren't filled with fear of death or the Empress's legend. They were filled with something far worse, a deep sadness. He lifted his right hand slowly, showing he meant no harm, then spoke in a trembling voice that echoed through the silent bay. "I think this belongs to you." His words froze every warrior. Zyra felt the world tilt. Her chest tightened painfully. Her breath shook. She stared at the white cloth in his arms. Something inside it shifted. A faint glow leaked through the fabric. A glow only Seraph royal blood possessed. Impossible. 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 Her child was gone. Lost. Dead. Or so she was told. The human gently uncovered a corner of the cloth. A soft pulse of light blinked like a heartbeat. The Empress's mouth fell open slightly. Her hands trembled. A sight no one in the galaxy had ever witnessed. Every Seraph guard stepped back in shock. The Empress took a slow step toward the human. Then another, eyes locked on the glowing bundle. Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. "What did you bring to me?" The human swallowed, as if the truth weighed too much for one soul to carry. "Your child," he said, voice shaking. The bay fell so silent the stars outside seemed louder. Zyra felt her entire universe crash into a new shape. Her child. Alive? Here? In the arms of a human? This couldn't be real. This couldn't exist. And yet the glow, the movement, the heat, it was unmistakable. Only royal Seraph children carried a living light. Only her child glowed like that. Her knees nearly buckled. She forced herself to breathe, forced herself to step forward, forced herself not to collapse under the weight of grief mixing with the new terrifying, fragile hope. But even as she moved closer, she noticed something the others missed. The human wasn't relieved. He wasn't proud of returning the impossible. His face held fear. Fear not of her, but fear of whatever story he carried behind the white cloth. Then, for the first time in her long life, the Empress felt true dread. Because inside that cloth, something moved again. Not with the motion of a normal child. Not with the softness she remembered. The movement was different, strained, unnatural, and alive. Zyra's voice returned in a whisper that seemed too small for an empress. "Show me." The human hesitated. His eyes softened as if preparing her for pain. Finally, he opened the cloth fully, and the Empress gasped so sharply the guards raised their weapons again in panic. Because the glowing, fragile being inside was indeed her child, but changed. The glow flickered like it was fighting something unseen. A strange pattern pulsed across its tiny wings. Half Seraph, half something else. Something not from this galaxy. Something that should not exist. Zyra stepped back, her heart crashing into terror. The human bowed his head and whispered, "Empress, your child is alive, but not the same." She stared at him with trembling fury, grief, and fear colliding inside her soul. "What happened?" she demanded. The human closed his eyes. His voice cracked with guilt. "The storm, the void. It touched them. I was there. I saw it. I tried to save them. But I wasn't fast enough. Zyra's breath shattered. Her claws curled. Her wings twitched. The entire bay felt like it would explode from tension. And then the child's eyes opened, glowing with a strange mixture of seraph gold and an unknown human-like blue. The Empress staggered backward. The human whispered the words that would ignite the greatest fear the galaxy had ever known. "Your child is changing." And with that, the cocoon-like glow around the infant pulsed so violently that every light in the bay flickered, and an ancient, forgotten sound, like a heartbeat from the void, echoed across the walls, marking the beginning of something far more terrifying than death. Something alive, something returning, something the human had barely escaped, and something that was now bonded to the royal bloodline of the most feared empire in existence. The moment the child's strange glowing eyes opened, the entire landing bay felt heavier, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Empress Zyra, the ruler whose voice made planets kneel, found herself unable to look away from the weak flicker of light inside her child's changing form. She took a slow step forward, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fragile hope she never wanted to feel again. The human man didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend himself. He only tightened his hold on the small, fragile bundle, as if afraid the child might slip away again if he loosened even his fingers. His voice came out low and trembling, the voice of someone who had carried a truth too heavy for a human soul. "Empress, I didn't steal your child. I didn't harm them. I found them." The seraph guards growled in suspicion, their wings spreading like blades as they prepared to strike. But Zyra raised her hand. No one dared move. Her eyes locked on the human's face, searching for lies, searching for guilt, searching for anything she could destroy for hurting her heart. But instead she found something unexpected, something disarming: sorrow. Deep human sorrow. "Explain," she demanded, the words shaking more than she intended. The human took a slow breath as if he had been preparing for this moment for a long time. "My name is Elias Rowan," he said softly, "researcher of the Terran Deep Void program." The warriors murmured in shock. Humans had always been curious, always exploring, always touching forbidden things. But even humans feared the deep void storms. Zyra's voice hardened. "How did you enter my territory alive?" Elias lowered his head for a moment. "My ship shouldn't have survived. I know that. The storm near Sector 9. It wasn't just a storm. It was something alive, something sentient, something old." A quiet chill crawled through the hall. Old was a word seraphs did not use lightly. "You saw the anomaly?" Zyra whispered, his jaw clenched. "I didn't just see it. It pulled me inside." Gasps echoed. Even Zyra felt her pulse spike with fear. Anyone pulled inside that cosmic storm never returned. But here stood a human who walked out of it alive. But what mattered more than his survival was what he carried. She looked at her child again, watching the wings twitch weakly, glowing in unknown colors. "How did you find them?" she asked. Elias's eyes softened with memories he clearly didn't want to relive. Inside the storm, time didn't move normally. Light bent, sound stretched. My instruments stopped working. My body felt like it was being shredded and rebuilt every second. I should have died. His voice cracked. But then, I saw a glow, a tiny heartbeat, like a star trapped in a cage of darkness. I followed it. Zyra held her breath. And Elias swallowed hard. "Your child was inside a cocoon, alive. But something was attacking them. Something made of void and hunger." The seraph guard stiffened. Zyra's wings twitched in horror. No seraph child had ever been touched by such a creature. Royal blood was too pure, too sharp, too luminous. But the child lying in the human's arms glowed with a rhythm that didn't belong to seraphs alone. Elias continued softly, "I didn't know who they were. I didn't know they belonged to you. I only knew one thing: they were dying." His eyes filled with the kind of ache only someone who had held death in their hands understood. "I tried to pull the cocoon away from the creature. I fought, screamed, tore into my mind. I thought I would lose my sanity. But I couldn't let the child die. Zyra felt her throat tighten painfully. No seraph would have risked insanity for someone else's child. But a human did. Elias looked at the Empress with quiet courage. I carried them through the storm. I shielded them with my suit's failing life support. I burned half my oxygen just to keep the glow alive. I didn't even know if I would reach my ship in time. His voice broke again. But something in them, something in your child kept fighting too. Not seraph strength. Not human strength. Something between. Zyra stared at him, shaking inside. Her child moved again, a weak stretch of hybrid wings. A soft sound escaped the baby, half cry, half pulse. Cut straight through her soul. Why did they not choose me? Zyra whispered, barely breathing. Elias looked down at the child, his expression full of something sacred. Because in the storm you couldn't reach them. But I was there, and they held on to the only heartbeat they could feel. Zyra felt the truth stab her deeply. Her armies, her fleets, her power, none could reach her child. But a single fragile human had walked through death itself and returned holding the last piece of her heart. The guards watched in disbelief as the Empress took another step toward Elias, her hand trembling as she slowly reached out. But before she could touch the child, the glow flared. A strange pulse surged through the bay. Panels flickered. Guards stumbled. Elias tightened his hold around the child protectively. The Empress stiffened, wings rising sharply. What is happening? Elias whispered, staring at the trembling small form. This started when the storm marked them. I don't know how else to describe it. Your child is not just yours anymore. Zyra's eyes flashed with rage and fear mixing into one storm. You dare? No, he interrupted softly. I'm not claiming them. I'm telling you what the storm did. Changed them. Something inside the void tried to merge with their essence. And when I pulled them out, I think it fused with a part of me too. The entire palace froze. Zyra stepped closer, her voice a low, lethal whisper. Explain. Now. Elias's expression turned hollow, tired, hopeless. Your child is alive because of you, but they are breathing because of me. Silence fell so thick it felt like gravity increased. The Empress felt tears burning behind her sharp eyes. Not of weakness, but of the terrifying truth she refused to accept. Her child's glow pulsed again, and Zyra realized it wasn't just seraph light anymore. Human warmth flickered through it. And something darker, something from the void, lurked underneath. Elias looked at Zyra with a heavy heart. Empress, your child is changing. And if we don't understand what the void did to them, we might lose them again. Zyra felt her entire soul collapse inward. Rage, grief, hope, hatred, gratitude, and fear all clashed inside her chest. But the loudest voice inside her heart whispered one truth. My child is alive, but not safe. She took one final step, stopping just inches away from Elias. Her voice trembling with a mixture of command and desperation she would never show anyone else. Human, you saved what is mine. Elias nodded. I tried. Her eyes softened for the first time in her reign. Just a flicker, just a crack, but enough to shock every guard witnessing it. Now, Zyra whispered, you will tell me everything, every second, every pain, every danger. There must be no lies between us. Elias looked at her with steady eyes. I didn't come to lie. I came to return a life. No, Zyra whispered, staring at the glowing child, her voice breaking completely for the first time in centuries. You came to return my heart, and for a moment, just a single fragile moment, the galaxy's most feared ruler looked like a grieving mother standing before the only person who could save her child from the darkness still chasing them. The palace halls trembled with a quiet fear as Empress Zyra walked beside Elias Rowan, the human who carried the fragile, half-glowing child close to his chest. The guards followed them in tense silence, their wings low, their weapons steady, unsure whether the human was a savior or a disaster sent straight from the void. Zyra felt her heart twisting with every weak pulse of light coming from her child. The glow flickered. Not steady seraph gold. Not bright. Not strong. but trembling like a candle fighting against a storm. She hated the fear growing inside her because she was not made to fear. She was made to conquer, to destroy, to command. But now, every breath she took drowned in the same question echoing inside her. Will my child survive? As they reached the palace inner chamber, the ancient walls lit up in soft patterns, recognizing the presence of royal blood. But the patterns flickered uncertainly as the hybrid glow from the baby reached them, as if the palace itself felt confused about whether the child was truly Seraph anymore. Zyra clenched her fists, refusing to look away from the human. She tried to stay calm, but her voice trembled with sharp pain. Tell me what happened in that storm. Tell me why my child looks like this. Elias swallowed hard, his steps slow, as if walking with the weight of a galaxy pressing on his spine. Empress, when the storm swallowed my ship, I thought I was dead. Everything twisted. Time stretched. The stars melted. I couldn't breathe. His voice cracked. Then I heard something. A heartbeat. Your child's heartbeat. Zyra froze mid-step, her wings tightening around her body like shields. Elias continued, his eyes drifting to the glowing infant. They were inside a cocoon. Not Seraph. Not human. Something made by the storm itself. Something alive. The void creature wrapped around them like it wanted to feed on their essence. Zyra's breath shook. My child fought. Elias nodded slowly. Yes, I could feel it. They pushed back. They tried to glow. They tried to survive. But the creature was too strong. He paused, remembering something that clearly tore him apart. I knew if I didn't pull them out, they would collapse. Zyra stared at him, emotional cracks forming in her voice. So you risked your own life. Elias looked away, unable to handle her eyes. I didn't think, Empress. I just reached for them. The void creature hit my mind. My memories burned. My heart almost stopped. But something in your child reached out too. The Empress stepped closer, her voice cracking with a quiet desperation no one had ever heard from her. What did they do? Elias whispered. They grabbed my finger. Zyra's heart shattered a little more. And that linked you too? Yes, he breathed. Their glow mixed with my suit's neural field. And when I pulled, the creature clung to them harder. So the cocoon took energy from me, from my body, from my heartbeat. So your child could survive the escape. Zyra stared at him, stunned. A human's heartbeat saved her child. A human's energy fed her child life. A human's mind shielded her child from a creature older than empires. Everything she believed about humans, weak, soft, simple, collapsed in one moment. But Elias wasn't done. His voice softened with fear. Empress, I think the creature marked them. A part of it stuck inside the child's energy. That's why they flicker. That's why their wings look different. They're fighting something invisible. Zyra's knees weakened as she whispered. So my child is not dying, but not living either. Elias's eyes glistened with guilt. They are in between. Human, Seraph, and something from the void. Zyra stepped closer again until her face was just inches from the fragile glow wrapped in cloth. The child squirmed weakly, a soft whine humming from their tiny mouth. The sound hit Zyra like a blade made of grief. She reached out with trembling fingers, but before she could touch the child, they pulsed again. A soft flash of mixed gold and blue light. The palace walls responded with an eerie vibration. Elias stiffened. This has been happening since the moment I brought them out of the storm. It's almost like they're calling for something. Zyra raised her head sharply. Calling for what? Elias hesitated, pain etched in every feature of his face. Calling for help. Calling for someone connected to them. Maybe calling for me. The word stabbed Zyra in the heart. Her child, her blood, her heir. Seeking a human's presence more than their own mother? Her wings tightened in instinctive jealousy, but then guilt crushed her chest. They only held your hand because I wasn't there, she whispered, her voice breaking raw. Elias nodded gently. Maybe, but I also think the storm fused a part of my neural pattern with theirs. They sense me. They feel my heartbeat. They think I'm safety. Zyra closed her eyes as pain washed over her like fire. For centuries she ruled with absolute control. She never bowed, never broke, never felt powerless. But today she felt small before her own child's suffering. She opened her eyes again and forced herself to speak, her voice trembling but cold. "Human, do you feel anything strange?" After the storm, Elias hesitated again, and that hesitation terrified her more than any attack fleet ever had. "Sometimes," he admitted softly. "At night I feel echoes of the creature's presence. I hear faint whispers. I see flashes of darkness. My heartbeat sometimes matches the child's glow. I feel pulled toward them, like something is tying us together." Zyra felt her breath freeze. A bond, a link, a connection between a human and her royal heir. Something ancient, something forbidden, something dangerous. She whispered, "Show me." Elias slowly shifted the child outward so the Empress could see clearly. Zyra bent down, her face only inches from the small trembling form. Her child's hybrid wings fluttered weakly, glowing and dimming like a dying star. A fragile tiny hand reached upward, not to Zyra, but toward Elias. Zyra's heart cracked again, but she forced herself to stay calm. She watched closely as Elias extended his finger. The moment the child touched him, a soft surge of light passed between them like a silent heartbeat. Then the child exhaled, a soft, peaceful sigh. Zyra's entire body went still. Her eyes widened. Her wings lowered slowly. "They stabilize when you touch them," she whispered. Elias nodded, his voice low. "Yes, without me their glow collapses. With me, it holds for a few seconds." Zyra's breath shook with a mix of hope and fear. "Then you are the only reason my child is still alive." Elias lowered his gaze, unable to look into her eyes. "Empress, if you want, I will stay. I won't leave them. I won't abandon them." Zyra stared at him for a long moment, her heart raging with emotions she didn't know how to control. Anger that a human held what she loved most, gratitude that he saved them, fear of what the void creature left behind, and grief that she could not protect her own child from a force even she could not touch. And underneath all of it, a painful truth. Her empire's greatest enemy was not a fleet, not a rebellion, not a rival empire, but the idea that her child's survival depended on a fragile human heart. She stepped 1 inch closer to Elias, her voice softer than anyone had ever heard. "Human, if you stay by my child's side, then you do not serve me. You serve the life they must keep." Elias nodded quietly. "Then I will protect them, even from the void." Zyra looked at her child again, her voice filled with a mother's pain and a queen's fear blending into one trembling truth. "Then, human, prepare yourself, because the void will not stop, and neither will I." And as the child pulsed weakly again, both the Empress and the human felt the same chilling realization forming silently in the air around them. The real danger was not what happened in the storm, but what was coming for the child now. Inside the deepest corridors of the Seraph Palace, where the walls hummed with ancient energy and the air felt thick with the weight of forgotten history, Empress Zyra led Elias Rowan toward the royal healing chamber, her mind drowning under a storm of fear, hope, anger, and confusion that refused to calm. The torches along the path flickered strangely whenever the child pulsed with mixed gold and blue light, as if the palace itself did not know how to respond to the presence of something that was both royal seraph and something entirely new. Zyra kept glancing at the fragile heartbeat wrapped in white cloth, each flicker of light twisting deeper into her chest. She could feel her child's pain like a second heartbeat inside her own ribs, and she hated the helplessness that wrapped itself around her bones like iron chains. She was a ruler who commanded stars, but she could not command life back into her baby. Every few steps, the child whimpered softly, a tiny sound that felt like a blade slicing Zyra's heart open again and again. She slowed her pace each time, desperate to reach them, desperate to touch them, but too afraid that contact might weaken the fragile pulse even further. Elias kept his arms tight around the child, every movement careful, protective, gentle, filled with a kind of emotion Zyra had not expected from a human. He looked exhausted, as if each breath carried a weight he hadn't yet learned how to carry. But he never loosened his grip, never faltered, never acted as if the child was not precious. The shame that burned in Zyra's chest surprised her. She, the Empress, had all the power in the world, yet it was this human weak by seraph standards, who held onto her child with more strength than armies possessed. 1,000 torches lit the hallway as they reached the ancient chamber door carved with the marks of the first seraphs. When Zyra touched the center symbol, the massive stone door trembled, then slowly rose with a deep growl that echoed through the palace like a waking beast. The chamber inside was enormous, glowing with soft, pure seraph light. It was a sacred place where no outsider had ever entered, where only the Empress and her bloodline stepped during moments of birth, illness, or death. For a moment, Elias hesitated at the threshold, as if unsure he had the right to enter a place so holy that entire armies bowed before it. But Zyra turned to him, eyes sharp yet trembling. "Step inside," she whispered, her voice both command and plea. "My child needs you, now more than ever." Elias nodded slowly and crossed the threshold. The moment he stepped inside, the light in the chamber shifted, responding to the child's mixed energy, colors bending into patterns no seraph had ever seen. Zyra followed, her wings folding in tightly as she moved toward the central healing platform made of glowing crystal that pulsed with the heartbeat of the royal bloodline. Elias carefully placed the child onto the platform. Immediately, the crystal responded with a soft hum, scanning the baby, analyzing the energy, reading every change, every injury, every shadow left behind by the void. Zyra's heart pounded painfully as she stepped closer, watching her baby's tiny chest rise and fall with trembling breaths. The glow spread across the crystal surface, revealing lifelines in gold, but broken by streaks of dark violet, the color of the void. The Empress staggered. "No, no, no," she whispered, her voice cracking in horror. "It reached their essence." Elias closed his eyes tightly, guilt carving deeper into his face. "Empress, the creature tried to consume them. I fought it, but I couldn't stop everything. A piece of it stayed." Zyra pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting a scream that clawed at her throat. She wanted to blame him. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to strike him for bringing this nightmare into her palace. But one look at his face, soft with regret, crushed with sorrow, and she knew she couldn't. He had risked his life for her child. He had fought the void alone. He had carried them across death itself. If not for him, her baby would not be breathing at all. The chamber's energy suddenly pulsed sharply, throwing both of them back a step as the child's glow flickered violently. Elias rushed forward instinctively, reaching toward the baby, but Zyra grabbed his arm, her eyes wide and filled with panic. "What is happening? Why are they shaking?" Elias didn't pull away from her grip. He turned to her with a heartbreaking mixture of fear and understanding. "Because the void energy inside them is waking up." Zyra felt ice spread through her veins. "Waking up?" Elias nodded slowly. "It sleeps, but only until triggered. The healing chamber is reading the child's pure seraph essence. It's trying to separate the intrusion, and the void energy is fighting back." Zyra felt her wings flare instinctively, a protective, primal reaction she couldn't control. "My child is fighting inside their own body." Elias looked down, voice soft and trembling. "Yes, and they're losing." Zyra's entire soul cracked into pieces. She stepped closer to the healing platform, tears filling her eyes. Real tears, not the glowing seraph energy she usually shed in battle. "What do I do? What do I do to save them?" Elias placed his hand on the edge of the crystal. "You can't touch the void energy. It will overwhelm you." "Then who can?" she whispered. Elias swallowed hard. "Me." Zyra whipped her head toward him, her breath stopping. "You?" Elias nodded, shaking but resolute. "The storm marked me too. It left traces inside my neural pathways. That's why the child stabilizes when I touch them. We're connected in a way that I can't fully explain." Zyra looked at him, stunned by the raw courage in his eyes. This tiny human, standing in the most sacred chamber in the galaxy, offering his life to save her child. If you touch them now, she whispered, the void might activate in you too. Elias took a deep breath. Then I'll fight it. I survived the storm once. I can survive it again. Zyra felt something break inside her. Something she never allowed herself to feel for anyone outside her own bloodline. Respect. She moved aside slowly, giving him space, her voice softer than breath. Then save them, Elias. Save my child. Elias reached out with trembling fingers. The moment his skin touched the child's glowing hand, a violent surge of energy cracked through the entire chamber, lighting the walls with blinding flashes of gold, blue, and violet. The void energy screamed silently as it collided with Elias's human essence, trying to force its way through him, trying to consume him, trying to shatter his mind. He gritted his teeth, muscles shaking, breath breaking, but he didn't pull back. Zyra felt her fists dig into her palms as she whispered, "Hold on, hold on." The child's glow flickered wildly, then slowly steadied, settling into a softer rhythm, as if Elias's touch anchored them to life again. Elias sagged forward, barely conscious, but still holding the tiny hand firmly. Zyra rushed forward, catching him before he fell. His breathing was ragged, his skin pale, his mind clearly fighting the echoes of the void creature again. "Elias! Elias! Don't let go!" Zyra said, her voice shaking uncontrollably. "They need you!" Elias forced his eyes open, barely able to speak. "I'm not letting go. Empress." Zyra pressed her forehead lightly against her child's glowing form, tears dripping onto the crystal. "Then neither will I." And in that sacred chamber, under ancient lights and shadows older than galaxies, a human and a mother fought together. Not against armies, not against empires, not against fate, but against the darkness that wanted to claim the only innocent life they both were ready to die for. The healing chamber glowed with a trembling light as Elias held onto the child's small glowing hand, each second carving deeper pain across his face, each breath leaving a faint vapor of exhaustion as the void inside him. And the void inside the child pushed, pulled, and collided through their connection. Empress Zyra stood beside them, her wings trembling with helpless fear, her fingers hovering just inches from her child but never touching, as if afraid that one single contact could break the fragile balance Elias was barely holding together. The palace walls outside the chamber trembled, reacting to the chaotic energy building inside. Even the royal guard stationed far down the hall felt the vibrations under their feet and exchanged fearful glances. They had never felt their empress's palace shake before. Inside, Zyra's heart hammered painfully with each flicker of her child's glow. The patterns on their tiny wings kept changing, shifting between seraph gold and human blue, until a pulse of dark violet cut through them like a scar. Zyra's breath broke as she whispered, "They're fighting too hard. They're too young for this." Elias, trembling so violently he could barely keep his hands steady, forced his voice out. "They're stronger than you think, Empress, but they need help." Zyra clenched her jaw, emotions threatening to drown her. "Tell me how to help them. Tell me what to do." Elias shook his head weakly. "You can't touch the void inside them." "But..." Zyra leaned in, heart collapsing. "But what?" Elias looked up at her with pained eyes, his voice cracking. "They're not just fighting the void. They're fighting themselves too. Two essences, two heartbeats, two energies. They're caught in between." Zyra felt her knees weaken. Her child wasn't dying from the void alone. They were tearing themselves apart from the inside because two worlds were inside them at once, and the tiny body didn't know how to hold both. She whispered, voice shaking, "Then what must be done?" Elias swallowed hard, his lips pale, his breathing uneven. "They need stability, a center, a focus, someone their energy will trust, someone they will anchor to." Zyra whispered in agony, "They are my child. Why won't they anchor to me?" Elias turned his head slightly, eyes soft with regret. "Because the storm changed everything. I was the one who held them inside the void. My heartbeat guided them out. My energy kept them alive when the darkness tried to erase them. They associate survival with me. It's not your fault. It's just, what happened? Zyra felt the words strike like knives. For the first time in her long life, she felt jealousy. Not toward power or territory, but toward a human's heartbeat. Elias's hand shook violently again. Blue light flickered across their connection. The void inside the child pulsed, angry, hungry, shuddering the chamber with a violent crack. Elias fell to his knees with a cry of pain, but he didn't release the child's hand. Zyra rushed forward, grabbing his shoulders to steady him, her voice raw. "Elias, you'll die. If I pull away, your child will die," he gasped in agony. Zyra froze, the words hitting her harder than any weapon. Her mind shattered with terror. Her child's life was tied to this human, and this human's life was hanging by a thread. The chamber pulsed again, a violent shockwave slamming into them. The child's tiny wings fluttered in distress. A small cry escaped their lips, weak and pained. Zyra's heart broke open. She couldn't stand it anymore. She couldn't stand watching her baby suffer, watching Elias collapse, watching the void tear them both apart. She lifted her trembling hands, her voice rising in pure desperation. "Elias, what do I choose? Tell me how to save them." Elias forced his head up, staring at her through blurry eyes. "You have two choices, both dangerous." Zyra's breath froze. "Tell me," she whispered. "First," Elias gasped, gripping the child's hand tighter. "You can let me keep the connection alone. It will stabilize them. But it will drain me. I'll lose myself slowly. The void will eat my mind. I might not last long." Zyra's wings froze mid-motion. She stared at him in horror. "What happens to my child then?" Elias closed his eyes tightly. "As long as I breathe, your child will live. But if the void consumes me completely, they will fall with me." Zyra felt a tear slip down her cheek, a rare tear carved from fear. "And the second choice?" Elias hesitated, pain ripping through his chest. He fought for breath before he whispered, "You join the bond." Zyra's eyes widened. "Me? Yes?" Elias coughed, blood touching the corner of his lips. "If your essence joins mine, together we can overpower the void inside them. A shared link. Seraph and human energy, united." Zyra felt hope flicker for the first time, but Elias wasn't finished. "But it's dangerous," he whispered. "If the void senses two powerful energies, it will attack harder. It might tear us both apart. And if you die..." Zyra's eyes narrowed fiercely. "My death means my entire empire collapses." "Yes," Elias breathed. "Both of you might die, and the void will take the child anyway." Zyra stepped back, breath shaking violently. One choice would save her child now, only to lose them later. The other choice risked everything, her life, her empire, her bloodline. And the child's safety too. Elias looked at her with exhausted eyes. "I won't make the choice for you, Empress. But they don't have long." As if sensing the urgency, the child whimpered again, tiny fingers curling weakly, glow fading. Zyra felt her heart twist with unbearable pain. She stepped closer, bending her head near her child, her voice trembling like a mother's plea echoing through centuries of power. "My baby, my little star, I will not lose you. Not to the void, not to fate, not to anything." Elias stared at the child too, voice cracking. "They're fighting, but they're slipping." Zyra's soul tore in half. The chamber dimmed around them. The void pulsed again. Two lives hung between her fingers. Her child's, Elias's, and hers. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, forcing every fear into silence. When she opened her eyes again, they blazed, not with rage, but with determination carved from a mother's love deeper than any empire. "Elias," she whispered, stepping forward. He looked up weakly. Zyra reached out, placing her trembling hand over both the child's and Elias's. Her breath trembled. Her wings shook. Her heartbeat roared in her own ears. "We fight together." And as soon as her hand touched theirs, the chamber erupted. Light exploded. The void screamed, 3 heartbeats merged, and the galaxy trembled, because the Empress had chosen the most dangerous path of all. The moment Empress Zyra placed her hand over Elias and the child, the entire healing chamber erupted in a violent shock of gold, blue, and deep void violet, ripping through the palace like a silent explosion of light and shadows twisting around each other in a storm that no living being had ever witnessed before. The floor trembled beneath their feet. The ancient walls vibrated with a deep, unsettling hum, and the air thickened until breathing felt like dragging air through fire. Zyra felt a searing force flood through her arm, racing into her veins, ripping across her chest and tightening around her heart. It wasn't pain like a physical wound. No, this was deeper, older, more primal, like something alive was clawing its way through her spirit. Elias cried out beside her, his body convulsing as the void energy latched onto him with violent hunger. But even through the pain, he held onto the child with both hands like a lifeline he refused to surrender. The child, tiny and fragile, glowed wildly, their wings fluttering in a frantic blur, their heartbeat flickering between life and collapse. Zyra leaned forward, her face only inches from her baby's as she whispered through gritted teeth, "Hold on, little one. Hold on. Your mother is here." Her words mixed with Elias's trembling voice. "Stay with us. Don't slip away, stay." Their combined energy collided with the void, and the chamber responded instantly. The ceiling lights shattered one by one, spraying shards of glowing crystal. Threads of void essence, dark and shadow-like, twisted through the air, attacking their connection like snakes made of pure darkness. Zyra flung her wings outward instinctively, shielding both Elias and the child inside her cocoon of blinding golden feathers. She screamed as the void slammed into her wings like burning ice, piercing through her feathers and sinking deep into her bones. She felt her knees weaken, her heart racing, her mind cracking under the pressure, but she did not pull back. Elias, barely conscious, reached toward her with his free hand, grabbing her arm, anchoring her, sharing his flickering human strength with her. Zyra felt his touch like a soft, trembling lifeline, fragile yet unbroken. For the first time in her life, she leaned on a human, not out of weakness, but because her child needed them both. The chamber floor split open beneath them as the void lashed out harder. Sensing that their unity was a threat, Zyra gasped as a violent pulse shot through her entire body, and for a moment she felt her own essence slipping, fading, dimming, her golden glow turning faint. Elias saw her falter and tightened his grip, whispering urgently through clenched teeth, "Empress, don't stop, don't let go." "I am not letting go," she hissed back, tears burning down her cheeks. "Not of my child, not of this bond, not of life." Outside the chamber, unknown to them, panic swept through the palace. Alarm bells screamed across the Seraph Dominion. Soldiers rushed through the halls, uncertain if they were under attack or if some ancient curse had awakened. In distant regions across the empire, rumors spread like wildfire. The glow from the royal tower pulsed across the sky, and every seraph across the Dominion felt a strange tug in their essence. A sign that something was wrong with the royal bloodline. High-ranking council members gathered in the throne room, eyes filled with fear and suspicion. They whispered among themselves, "The Empress is performing forbidden merging rituals. She risks the throne. She risks us all." Others argued, "Humans are involved. This is corruption. This is infection. This is betrayal." In minutes, the fear turned into fury. Rebellion voices rose. Armies in distant colonies questioned their loyalty. And at the center of it all, inside the healing chamber, the source of the Empire's panic fought for its life. Zyra didn't hear any of the chaos outside. The only sounds she heard were the fading heartbeat of her child and the breaking breath of the human beside her. She felt the void press into her mind, whispering cold voices that sank like daggers into her skull. She saw flashes of its memories. Worlds swallowed, stars drained, children lost inside its storm. It wanted her child. It wanted Elias. It wanted everything. "No," Zyra snarled, her voice breaking into a roar that echoed through the chamber like the cry of a wounded goddess. You cannot have them. They are mine. The void responded with a violent scream that shook the entire palace. Elias nearly collapsed, his vision blurring. Zyra grabbed him, pulling him close, supporting him with her arm even as the void clawed at both their souls. She felt him sag against her, his forehead dropping to her shoulder, his breath barely a whisper. Empress, I can't. I'm losing. Zyra cupped the side of his face with her shaking hand, forcing him to look at her. Her voice softened, not with authority, but with a strange, aching tenderness. Elias, don't you dare give up now. My child needs you. I need you. Elias trembled, tears slipping down his face, but he nodded weakly. Their combined touch sent another wave of mixed energy into the baby, who suddenly gasped, a tiny, desperate breath, then cried out in a faint, fragile wail. Zyra nearly collapsed in relief at hearing that sound. That's it. Cry, little one. Stay with us. The glow around the child flickered, flickered, then steadied. Just a little, just enough. Zyra and Elias felt the void recoil, momentarily weakened by the surge of life. But the victory was brief. Zyra felt a crushing pressure slam into her chest, knocking the air from her lungs. She fell to one knee, dragging Elias down with her. The void struck again and again, faster and harder, sensing the merging bond strengthening. Elias's vision darkened, his body limp. The child whimpered louder, their glow dimming dangerously. Zyra forced herself up, wings shattering with strain, her breaths ragged. Fight me, fight us. But you will not take my child. She screamed into the storm of darkness. The void responded, attacking with its full power. And at the exact moment the chamber reached its breaking point, a deep, thunderous boom shook the entire palace. It was not from inside. It was from outside, far outside. Something massive had struck the outer walls. Zyra's eyes widened. The rebels, the council, the empire she ruled, was rising against her. Another boom, another, and another. Elias forced his fading eyes open, whispering in horror, Empress, someone is attacking. Zyra's wings rose slowly, trembling but fierce. They think I've lost control, she said softly, voice breaking. They think my child is corrupted. Elias swallowed painfully. They'll try to take the throne. Zyra's voice darkened with heartbreak and fury. They will try to kill my child to save the empire. Elias's breath caught. Then what do we do? Zyra lifted her head slowly, eyes glowing with a fire so fierce it silenced the chamber. We protect them, she whispered fiercely. Together. As the palace doors shook from outside explosions and the void creature shrieked from within, Empress Zyra, Elias Rowan, and the fragile hybrid child stood at the heart of a storm of rebellion, darkness, and fate. 3 lives bound together by fear, love, destiny, and a connection the galaxy had never seen before. And the Empress finally understood. The greatest battle wasn't against the void. It was against her own empire, rising to destroy the child she would die to protect. The healing chamber shook with terrifying force as the echoes of rebellion pounded against the palace walls, each impact like a countdown pressing the Empress closer to a fate she had never imagined. Her own people rising to kill the child she was fighting desperately to save. Dust fell from the ancient ceilings, trembling on the edge of collapsing, while the glowing symbols carved into the walls flickered between life and darkness. Zyra held her child close to her chest now, her wings curved protectively around both Elias and the tiny hybrid life glowing weakly between them. Elias leaned heavily against her, barely conscious, breathing in shallow gasps as the void crawled through his veins like a cold poison. His hand remained wrapped around the child's small fingers, refusing to let go even as his body trembled with exhaustion. Zyra looked at him, and a deep ache filled her chest. She, the Empress feared across galaxies, now felt fear for the life of a human who should have meant nothing to her. But he meant everything because her child's survival was tied to his heart. Another explosion hit the outer palace wall, harder than the last. The doors rattled. The floor cracked. Voices echoed from beyond the chamber. Rebels shouting commands, soldiers calling out warnings, council members screaming about corruption and danger. Zyra's wings tightened, her heart burning with rage. They want to destroy my baby. They think killing them will save the empire. She whispered in a trembling voice that sounded nothing like the unbreakable ruler she had always been. Elias forced his eyes open, his voice a faint whisper. Empress, they don't understand. They think the void infection is spreading. Zyra looked at him with pain and fury, her golden eyes glowing brighter. They believe lies. They fear what they cannot understand. But they will not touch my child. Not while I breathe. Before Elias could respond, a shiver crawled across the chamber floor. Slow at first, then crawling faster, like something slithering beneath the surface of reality itself. The air thickened. Cold seeped into their bones. The lights dimmed one by one, turning the chamber into a half-lit world suspended between life and oblivion. Zyra felt her heart freeze. It's here, Elias whispered, voice breaking with fear. It followed us. It followed the child out of the void. A low, vibrating hum filled the chamber, shaking the walls. The shadows in the corners deepened, twisting unnaturally, stretching like long fingers searching for life. Zyra stepped back instinctively, holding her child tighter, her wings curling inward as she whispered, "Show yourself." And then the shadows peeled away from the floor. A shape rose, pitch black, shifting between smoke and flesh, between void and nightmare, between formless hunger and living hatred. No mouth, no eyes, no face. Yet its presence screamed through their minds with 1,000 whispered voices. Bring the child back. Elias clutched his head, falling to his knees as the creature's voice tore through him like claws dragging across his soul. Zyra grabbed him instantly, pulling him against her, shielding him with her wings. The creature pulsed again, and the chamber turned cold enough to freeze breath midair. Zyra snarled, lifting her chin defiantly. You will not take my child. Her voice came out as a roar, broken by emotion, sharpened by raw instinct. The void creature pulsed again, and shadows shot across the room like spears. Zyra's wings flared wide, catching the first strike with a cry of pain as the darkness burned through her feathers. Elias pushed himself forward weakly, reaching out in desperation. It wants the child, not us. It will kill everyone to get to them. Zyra snapped, pushing him behind her. The creature slid closer, its form expanding and contracting like a nightmare breathing. The baby whimpered, glowing faintly, their heartbeat skipping, faltering, flickering like a dying star. Elias felt panic claw through him. Empress, the child. They can't handle this. The void is calling them. Zyra held the baby against her chest, her hands shaking. Then we silenced the void. The creature hissed, drifting closer, its form rippling between dimensions. Elias grabbed the edge of the crystal platform, forcing himself to stand even though his legs nearly buckled under him. I can feel it. It's connected to me. It's pulling at my mind. Zyra turned to him sharply, her voice strained. Can you fight it? Elias looked into her eyes, fear mixing with determination. Not alone. Zyra stepped close, placing her burning forehead against his, wings wrapping around all three of them. Then we fight together. The creature lunged. Elias reached for the child. Zyra gathered her entire essence. 3 heartbeats collided. Gold, blue, violet. The chamber exploded in blinding light. The void creature shrieked, its voice tearing through the stone like death itself. Zyra screamed as the void force ripped across her mind, trying to tear her from her own body. Elias cried out, holding onto the baby, his heart racing so fast it felt like it would burst. The child gasped, their glow flaring dangerously bright. And then it happened. The child's tiny hand lifted on its own and touched the void creature. A shockwave blasted outward, hurling Zyra and Elias backward. The creature froze, its shapeless body flickering. The child glowed brighter, purer, stronger than ever before. Zyra stared, wide-eyed with terror and awe. They're responding. They're fighting. Elias whispered, voice breaking. The baby's mixed gold-blue glow pulsed against the void like a heartbeat of life pushing against death. The creature shrieked again, cracking the walls, splitting the floor. Zyra pulled herself up, wings trembling. No, no. They're too young. Their little body can't handle it. Elias crawled toward the baby, screaming over the roar of void energy. They're not fighting alone, Zyra. Help them. Zyra rushed forward, placing her hand over the child's back, tears pouring down her face. My star, my heart. Take my strength. Take everything. Elias put his shaking hand over hers, the three forming the bond once more. Light burst outward again. So fierce the creature staggered backward. But it didn't disappear. It grew angrier, wilder, more desperate. It lunged with full force straight for the child. Zyra screamed in terror and put herself between the creature and her baby, wings outstretched, ready to die. Elias did the same, planting himself in front of Zyra, ready to take the blow first. But the creature stopped, frozen mid-lunge, its body flickering violently. Something had changed, something impossible. From the glow around the baby, a tiny voice whispered inside Zyra's mind, soft as a breath. Mama. Zyra broke into tears. Real, uncontrollable tears. Because that voice was not seraph, not human, something beyond both. Elias trembled, whispering, They spoke. The void creature recoiled in fear, its body shrinking. The child's glow intensified. Zyra held her baby tighter, her entire body shaking as she whispered, My love, my star, what are you becoming? Elias stared in disbelief. Something the void is afraid of. And for the first time, the void stepped back. The void creature stepped back for the first time, its shifting form trembling like a shadow torn from its own darkness, as if the tiny whisper from the glowing child had struck a fear deeper than death inside its ancient essence. Empress Zyra held her baby close, her wings folded around them like a shield carved from love and desperation. Elias leaned against her, his breaths ragged, his body trembling with exhaustion. Yet his eyes fixed on the creature with the stubborn determination of a man who refused to surrender even when every bone in his body cried out for rest. The chamber, once filled with crushing darkness, now glowed with a soft mixed light from the child. Gold and blue spinning together in patterns neither seraph nor human had ever seen before. Zyra looked down at her baby, tears streaming silently down her face as she whispered, My little star, what power sleeps inside you? What light makes even the void afraid? The baby's tiny hand tightened weakly around her finger, their glow pulsing softly, as if reassuring her. But the void creature was not finished. It trembled violently, its form twisting and swelling as the shadows around it thickened again. It let out a piercing, mind-shattering scream, a sound that cracked the walls and sent shards of ancient crystal raining down from the ceiling. Elias cried out, clutching his head as voices tore through his mind. Voices calling him, pulling him, demanding he give the child back. Zyra roared and wrapped her wings tightly around him and the baby, her golden feathers blazing with protective fury. No, you will not take them. Not from me. Not from him. Not from life. The creature lunged forward again, faster, stronger, more desperate than ever. Zyra held her ground, but she felt her strength slipping. The void slammed into her wings like a tidal wave of darkness, shattering feathers, burning through her skin, tearing into her spirit. She gritted her teeth, refusing to fall, refusing to surrender, refusing to let the void touch the child. Elias, shaking, forced himself to stand. His legs buckled instantly, but he grabbed the edge of the crystal platform and pulled himself upward, step by agonizing step, until he stood beside Zyra again. We fight together, remember? He breathed. She looked at him, tears running down her face, and nodded. Together. The void screamed again and struck with full force, aiming straight for Elias this time. Zyra yelled and reached for him, but the attack hit too fast, slamming into his chest and hurling him backward. He crashed into the wall, collapsing instantly, his body limp, his breath barely visible. "Elias!" Zyra screamed, her voice breaking apart. Elias didn't move. He didn't respond. He didn't breathe. Zyra felt her world collapse in one crushing heartbeat. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, her voice trembling like a dying flame. "Not him. Not now. Not after everything." The baby whimpered, their glow dimming dangerously, their tiny body shaking with weakness, their heartbeats stuttering like a dying star. Zyra pulled them close, tears falling onto their skin as she whispered through sobs, "My child, please, don't fade. Don't leave me. Don't go where I cannot follow." The void creature loomed above them, towering, its form expanding like a nightmare swallowing reality. Zyra looked up with wild, broken eyes. Eyes of a mother ready to die but not ready to lose her child. "Come for me," she whispered. "Take me. Spare them." The void pulsed, interested. Elias, half-conscious, forced his cracked voice out, barely audible. "Zyra, don't." She looked over, her heart shattering at the sight of him barely alive. "Elias." He tried to lift a hand, his fingers twitching weakly. "Don't make that sacrifice. Your child needs you." Zyra's tears fell harder. She moved toward him, dragging herself across the shattered crystal floor until she was beside him, pressing her forehead against his. "You saved them. You saved me. You saved us." Elias swallowed painfully, whispering, "We save them together." The void shrieked again, preparing to strike its final, killing blow. Zyra felt the air freeze as the darkness gathered into a concentrated spear, aimed straight at her heart. She closed her eyes, holding both Elias and her child close, preparing to take the blow, ready to give her life for theirs. But the blow never came. Instead, the chamber filled with a soft, steady glow. Zyra's eyes opened slowly, confusion trembling in her chest. She looked down at the child in her arms. Their glow, once weak and flickering, was steady now. Strong, pure. Gold-blue light swirled around their small form like a shield. Their wings spread for the first time, tiny, trembling, beautiful. The baby looked up at the void creature with eyes that held both ancient innocence and something beyond understanding. They raised a tiny hand, and the glow surged outward in a silent, radiant wave. The void creature screamed, louder, sharper, breaking apart at the edges as if the child's small light was slicing through eternity itself. Zyra stared in shock as the creature shrank, shuddered, cracked like shattered glass, and dissolved into nothingness, disappearing into dust swallowed by the chamber floor. Silence fell. A deep, heavy, impossible silence. No void, no darkness, no threat, just a baby glowing softly in Zyra's arms. Zyra collapsed to her knees, clutching the child to her chest as she let out a sob so raw it echoed through the chamber walls. "You saved us?" Elias groaned softly, his voice faint but alive. Zyra rushed to him, tears overflowing. "Elias, Elias, stay with me." He opened his eyes slowly, weak but smiling. "You, both of you, saved me too." Zyra pressed her forehead to his again, shaking with relief, with gratitude, with emotions she did not know how to carry. "You lived, my child lived. The void is gone." Elias reached up, brushing the back of his fingers gently against the child's cheek. "They chose life." Zyra nodded, tears falling onto Elias's hand. "And they chose you." Outside the chamber, the rebelling armies fell silent as the tower of royal light exploded in brilliant gold and blue. Across the empire, every seraph felt the bond of royal blood strengthen, awaken, and radiate like a new dawn. No corruption, no danger, only life, only hope, only the heir alive and reborn. Zyra stood slowly, cradling her child carefully, then reached down and helped Elias stand beside her. She looked into his eyes with a trembling, emotional whisper. "From this moment, you are not just a human in my palace. You are the protector of my child, chosen by fate, bound by light." Elias swallowed, eyes soft. I accept." Zyra smiled. A real smile, gentle and painfully beautiful. "Welcome, guardian." And as they stood together, mother, child, human, the empire outside bowed unknowingly before a new future. A future born not of fear, but of a miracle no galaxy had ever seen. And the story of the Empress who grieved her fallen child became the legend of the Empress whose child returned with a human and a light that defeated the void itself.